Of course we know this, and now I think we need a leader to stand up. Come and tell us what we need to do, not here talking crap. Listening to Tony's words, the expressions of the few people present were not very good looking. Nick Fury was also a little embarrassed. What Tony said just now directly interrupted what Nick Fury was going to say next. For a while Nick Fury didn't know what to say. He stared blankly at Tony, and the others didn't speak. Tony cleared his throat, and said lightly, "Now, who wants to be the captain of this alliance?" Everyone didn't speak, they all lowered their heads, not knowing what they were thinking. In this case, the alliance will probably not be harmonious, and everyone will not speak. Tony said, but after Tony finished speaking, no one spoke. Everyone was looking at him, but still didn't speak. The scene was once very embarrassing. Let's put this matter on hold for a while, and I'll take the captain's place for a while. Nick Fury said suddenly. He has realized that the most important point is still missing. It is a crisis, and a well-timed crisis can make this plate of scattered sand condense into a complete group. Everyone broke up, and Wang Ni was going to return to Wakanda for research. It's just that he was just about to leave when the little Spider-Man who was talking to him just now chased him out. "Hey, Mr. Stark. Please wait." Tony looked back at the strange kid. "What's the matter, kid? I just want an autograph." As he spoke, little Spider-Man took out a notebook and a pen, which seemed to have been prepared long ago. Tony smiled, took the notebook and pen, and wrote his name on it. "All right. Thank you, Mr. Stark. Goodbye, kid." Stark left here directly after speaking. It's really just a kid. New York. A small warehouse in the suburbs. Thor and Pietro told Pietro about their experiences while drinking. "Oh, my royal father likes to beat and scold me when he's free, and I don't dare to complain. It's really hard and I can't tell. Now being exiled to this kind of place again, I don't know what to do." After listening to Thor's words, Pietro said lightly, "Actually, none of these matters. The most important thing for you now is to get Mjolnir as soon as possible. With him you are complete Thor, that's for sure. Isn't what you said nonsense? I don't know it's serious yet." Thor said and took another sip of wine into his mouth. "I tried to summon the hammer before, but it didn't work, never before." While talking, Thor fell down, and Pietro also sat down, after the chat just now. Pietro generally understands Thor's situation, but now Thor is drunk, and Pietro has already recovered. Now there is the issue of guarding the hammer. There are quite a few people guarding the place where it fell. If you go in rashly, you may be subdued before Thor touches the hammer. But Pietro found a loophole in the guards. It was when they were changing shifts, and at this time the place was unattended for a period of time. Seeing that no one was guarding, Pietro immediately seized the opportunity. Enter the place where the hammer fell before. The hammer was on, everything was normal, and Pietro didn't see anything unusual. Pietro went up and tried it. Pietro tried almost as hard as sucking, but he didn't move a bit. "It seems that I am not recognized by the hammer," as Thor said. But Pietro didn't care. This kind of thing is not suitable for his own use. "I picked it up and returned it to Thor directly. It's just that Pietro can't pick up the hammer now, and the guards at the moment have changed their shifts." Pietro could only quickly slip away and return to the warehouse. Definitely Pietro played a little trick. After all, things like satellites are very powerful. So it's better to be cautious. Back at the warehouse, Thor is still asleep. This guy is really drunk and doesn't care about anything. The snoring was so loud that he didn't wake up even when Pietro came back, and the snoring was still loud. Seeing Thor's appearance, Pietro also found a place to lie down. Asgard, in the main hall, Odin stared at the screen tightly, looking at Thor who was soundly asleep. His beard started to tremble with anger. "This kid, you really failed to succeed and failed. You actually fell asleep like this. What the hell was born to me?" Thor really pissed off Odin. Frigga on the side quickly patted Odin on the back. It's okay, the child will grow up, isn't it still on the way now? Maybe Thor will suddenly have an epiphany later on. I hope." Odin listened to Frigg's analysis, and understood that Frigg was speaking well of Thor. It's just that the current situation is really not optimistic. Odin himself knows best about his body. The word overwhelmed has been in Odin's mind many times. It's just that as a god king, he is the supreme ruler of Asgard. Many times Odin is involuntary, but he didn't show it. Frigga has been watching, but she really can't help Odin too much. Now let's see if Thor can grow up as soon as possible. It's not just Asgard who is paying attention to Thor's side, Russell is also paying attention. These two little guys are really worrying, but they are relatively safe now. Looking at the two guys, Russell thought for a moment, this Thor can't lift Mjolnir now. The current situation looks very delicate, and it seems that Nick Fury's side is not going well. The members are not very united. At this time, a powerful enemy is actually needed to unite them. At this moment, Russell seems to be able to understand why Ancient One doesn't like to meddle in these things very much. There are times when the Earth does need some tribulation. But Russell thought about it, it's too far away now, let's deal with Thor first. And my own small universe has not been very peaceful recently. There are always some fluctuations for no reason, and the space seems to be a little unstable. I don't know what the reason is, it may also be that the expansion of the small universe is too fast. The power is a bit too large. It just seems that these small situations are still very important, mainly because I don't know how to deal with these things. Another very important thing is that the will that has been cleared before seems to appear in these abilities. As if to make a comeback again. It's just that this time it's obviously not as strong as the last time, it's only slightly revealed. It was annihilated directly by Russell, but this time Russell took advantage of the trend to find the source. This source was actually the planet that Russell sucked in before, and now that planet is no longer like it used to be with some low-level creatures. Animal-like species have evolved on this planet now. Moreover, there seems to be a life on this planet, and this life is different from those lives. From the feeling, Russell could feel the power of this life. On this planet, it can be said without a doubt that this life form is the strongest, and his power is also aggressive. Russell felt these things quietly, as if they were conquering a territory. Suddenly, he seemed to have found what he had been looking for, something that obviously didn't belong on this planet at all. Buried deep within the planet. In just a split second, Russell landed on this planet and directly pulled out that thing from the depths of the planet. It's just that Russell was a little taken aback when he pulled it out. This thing that does not belong to this planet is actually a magical weapon, but it was abandoned on this planet for some unknown reason. And it's buried so deep. Obviously not wanting to bring this magic weapon back into the world, Russell felt the breath of this magic weapon. It is the breath and will that I felt when I devoured the planet before. It's just that the will on this magic weapon is even stronger. But it was nothing to Russell, it was just 1 + 1 turned into 2, no matter how powerful it was still no match for Russell's will. There is another most important point, the will on this magic weapon is not complete, it is just a remaining will. Russell just wanted to destroy this will, and thought of another good idea. In fact, it is not necessary to eliminate this consciousness, in fact, it can also be used as waste. As soon as he thought of it, Russell immediately started to control the remaining consciousness in this magic weapon. At first, this conscious resistance was quite fierce, but after a while, I probably felt that resistance was useless. So he stopped struggling, quietly waiting for the arrival of Mage. But Russell mobilized part of his power and injected it directly into this residual consciousness. Immediately, the consciousness was controlled by Russell's power, and the little bit of consciousness was wiped out. Now this artifact has also become Russell's artifact. It's just that a mage like Russell doesn't need any magic weapon at all. Magic is his strongest weapon, and Russell had the highest ability among mage back then. It was precisely because of this that Ancient One decided to give up the position of Supreme Mage. It just so happened that Ancient One himself wanted to rest. That's why there is the current Supreme Mage Russell. And after Russell assimilated this magic weapon just now, he also shared the memory left in the consciousness of this magic weapon. The previous owner of this magic weapon was a dimensional god of a plane, and it was only when he was fighting with gods of other dimensions. He was seriously injured and was close to being destroyed, so he buried his consciousness deeply in the depths of the magic weapon. Then he hid the magic weapon deep in the depths of this planet, and only then survived. It's just that he was really unlucky and met Russell. This can be regarded as its doom. Russell looked at it carefully for a while. The previous name of this magic weapon was the Rod of Annihilation. But now there are too many scars on it. And after Russell wiped out the remaining will just now, this magic weapon also lost its last support. The entire magic weapon seems to be shattered at any time. In fact, Russell's idea is very simple, that is, he wants to serve himself with this conscious body. But the reality doesn't seem to be like that, this consciousness is directly transformed into power after being assimilated. The container is no longer working, so helpless, Russell can only give up the previous idea. Only this staff is left, although now the staff is almost as brittle as a piece of paper, and it will break if you try hard. But the material of this staff is not this simple, dark iron or something. To be honest, Russell has never seen this material. It is said that it is vibranium, but the strength does not reach the strength of vibranium at all, and it is said that it is another metal. But it's so crispy. Russell thought it over, and took it back to Tony for their research. After all, this can be said to be an unknown material, and it was very strong when Russell first got it. This phenomenon is also very strange to Russell, but Russell is going to leave it to Tony to worry about. Wakanda, on Bifrost. After such a long period of repairs, Ikwe and his people finally built this Bifrost. Now just waiting for Russell to test it, Tony flew in midair looking at the huge amounts of Bifrost in front of him. He looked at the tall dwarf beside him and was speechless in amazement. If you let these dwarfs help you design Stark Industries buildings, it will definitely be. But Tony just thought about it, this dwarf would definitely not do such a thing. Russell at the moment also came out of the teleportation circle, looking at the basically complete Bifrost. Russell was very happy. Ikwe, is Bifrost finished? I think everyone has basically stopped. That's right, now it's waiting for you to open it for the first time. Ikwe said, obviously, he is still very satisfied with this Bifrost. The dwarfs on the side also looked at Bifrost proudly, waiting for Russell to make the first teleportation. Similarly, Odin at the moment in Asgard also looked at Bifrost in front of him. There is some expectation in the eyes. Russell is also better than pigs to start the first teleportation after the completion of Bifrost. Russell, meanwhile, reselected the caretaker. Dormammu would be a big ostentation, but one thing, Russell can't trust this guy. Now Russell has a new candidate, and Russell has constructed an extremely complicated rune in front of him. Then he hit himself with a bang. Ikwe, who was watching and standing aside, couldn't help clenching his teeth. This Supreme Mage is the Supreme Mage, he is cruel enough to himself, although he doesn't know why he self-mutilates. But Tree has a feeling that Russell is awesome. But Russell didn't self-mutilate, this rune was inadvertently seen in the consciousness of the magic weapon before. The meaning of this rune is to separate a self with self-determined strength from itself. Although one's own strength will be temporarily reduced for a period of time due to the separation of a part. But with Russell's cultivation speed, this is not a problem at all. However, this method has one of the most fatal flaws, that is, all prosperity and all losses. Although if you do this, you can double the speed of cultivation, and you can also have a relatively independent personality. But if this fabricated duplication is destroyed, then Russell will not suffer the slightest bit of backlash. Although the risk of doing so is high, the safety factor is the highest. To be honest, Russell wouldn't feel at ease if anyone else was guarding here. Russell watched his duplication go to the Bifrost and inserted the token into the slot. Immediately, a hole was opened on Bifrost, and Russell walked in slowly. After a burst of dazzling golden light, Russell successfully arrived in Asgard. From far away Russell felt the peeping from Odin. Russell stared back unceremoniously. Directly draw a circle to teleport to Odin's hall. At the moment Odin was stroking his beard, the scene was a bit awkward. It was Russell who spoke first. You sent Thor there again, aren't you afraid that he is really finished? When the time comes, no one will inherit your throne, it depends on what you do. Russell looked at Odin and said, oh, but you know how Thor looks like now, how serious the situation is now. Whether the Kree Empire will make any big moves for a while, there must be some big plans. Odin said seriously. Although my army won last time, I feel that the Kree Empire must have a counter move or a killer weapon. Just wait for us to fall in. Odin coughed twice while talking. Russell looked at Odin and sighed. It seems that Odin's body is indeed getting worse day by day. To be honest, if Thor is still like that. When Odin really dies, Asgard is really in danger. I will think of a solution for Thor's matter. Pietro next to him is my man. I believe he will bring us surprises. Russell looked at Odin and said confidently. In fact, Odin didn't know that Pietro was also a problem boy, and it was purely an arrangement of fate that these two got together. Russell really didn't have anyone else suitable for this. Plus Quicksilver just needed a chance to work out, and Russell let him do it. To be honest, Russell was completely speechless about Thor. In some respects, Thor's mind was indeed a little slow. Ms. Carroll can be said to be a straight girl of steel. As long as Thor can make pornography, I can't blame Odin for being furious, because Thor is too disappointing. Odin also had a headache for Thor, and really didn't know what to say. Whether he is exiled to Midgard now, it depends on what he can be transformed into. Now the Bifrost on Russell's side has also been built, and it is much more convenient for Thor to come back. Odin just wanted to remind Russell not to spread the things that Bifrost has built. Russell waved his hand. You don't have to worry too much about this matter. I have already arranged these things in the morning, so don't worry about it. By the way, now that Bifrost has been built, Ikui and his people should go back to the place where he lived before. As soon as Odin spoke, Russell directly rejected Odin. Ikui has already answered me this question. He said that he wants to stay in Midgard now. Hearing what Russell said, Odin was really suffocated. I will give you the destroyer armor, just so you can use it easily. Russell said. Okay, farewell, I will guarantee that Thor will change. As he said that, he was about to leave here. Odin watched Russell's disappearing figure, and didn't say anything. Russell can't be cornered now, this supreme mage is not easy to mess with. But if Thor could, Russell return to Wakanda via Bifrost. After all, Odin still doesn't know that the Tesseract he hid on Earth has been taken away by Russell. Now openly use power in front of Odin. It would be bad if Odin saw it. Back in Wakanda, Ikui joined him. Russell Mage, you see that the Bifrost has been built now, shouldn't it be time for our clan to arrange it? As he spoke, Ikui rubbed his hands and looked at Russell. Russell looked at Ikui, stretched out his hand, and a dark door opened. This is your new home, don't worry. This space is absolutely hidden and very strong, you can stay in it with peace of mind. As he spoke, he sent a force directly to Ikui. Now this space is completely at your disposal. Talking, Russell motioned Ikui to try it himself. Ikui's people also looked at Ikui expectantly. I saw a black light flashing on Ikui's hand, and the entrance of this space was more than doubled. With the shaking of Ikui's hand, the space entrance closed again. Thank you, Russell Mage. Ikui's face was full of smiles. But what he doesn't know is that this space is a bit tricky, and the security of the space is indeed safe enough. But this space is actually a space separated from Russell's small universe. In essence, it still belongs to Russell's small universe, so Russell's operation can be said to indirectly protect the dwarfs. And Ikui still thinks this space is very good, and is planning how to divide the space inside. Russell has a more important thing to do now, which is to pay attention to Thor's situation, and just promised Odin. Naturally, this superficial skill must be done properly. New York, Mjolnir fell to the ground. At the moment, it was almost time for shift change, and it was already late at night. The guards are not particularly strict, no one can lift this hammer, what's so interesting? Some of the guards were still complaining. Indeed, looking at such a hammer, these days are indeed a bit boring. Hey, don't say a few words, let the captain hear you and scold you again. Let's go, it's time. Another guard said. Hurry up, let's go back to play cards, haha. Just after the three of them left, in the grass not far away, the figures of Thor and Pietro sneaked out from the grass. Thor looked around, and jumped into the camp. Pietro had explored it before, and Mjolnir was right in the middle of the camp. Thor at the moment was preparing to go straight into the camp, he could feel Mjolnir's power. Pietro was outside to let the wind pass, and Thor went in to get the hammer. Everything is very well organized. It's just that when Thor saw Mjolnir, Thor was a little scared, he was afraid that he couldn't lift the hammer. He was afraid of these situations, but Pietro at the moment suddenly appeared beside Thor and said, Go, your hammer awaits his master to lift him. Listening to Pietro's words, Thor looked at his hand, then at Mjolnir, and stepped forward to hold the hammer. Pietro at the moment also ran outside to let the wind go. And at the moment Russell and Odin also watched Thor, watching his hand gradually grasp the handle of the hammer. Then slowly exert force, but what they imagined did not happen, no matter how hard Thor tried. The hammer didn't budge, and Thor's worst fears had happened. He couldn't lift the hammer now. Pietro's voice also came from outside. We should go, night shift is back, Thor. Pietro yelled outside for a while and found that Thor didn't answer. Then he returned to the camp, and as soon as he entered the camp, Pietro found Thor kneeling on the ground, wondering what he was thinking. And as the footsteps outside gradually approached, Pietro didn't care what Thor was thinking, so he lifted Thor up and started running. As with the last strategy, Pietro safely brought Thor back to the original warehouse curry. After repeatedly confirming the safety of the surroundings, Pietro looked at Thor. At the moment Thor's face was ashes, as if he had lost his soul, his eyes were lifeless. The state of the whole person is completely two people compared to before. Looking at Thor's appearance, Pietro probably knew what happened. Well, Thor, maybe that hammer isn't your Mjolnir, or maybe. Impossible. The hammer still has the notch I left on it, there is nothing wrong with it. Thor said. Is there something wrong with you? No, nothing will go wrong, it's just that the hammer doesn't recognize me now. Listening to Thor's narration, Pietro also had a headache. Originally, he thought about taking Thor to the drop point of the hammer, taking the hammer up and walking away. As a result, this kind of thing happened now, and Pietro didn't know what to do for a while. Looking at Thor's appearance, Pietro chose the most direct way. Drink. Pietro's speed is fast, and he came back with a case of beer in a short while. Thor looked at this novelty, although it was not as good as the wine in Asgard. But it also has a special flavor. After a while, a case of beer will bottom out. It's just that they didn't realize that there were already agents ambushed outside the warehouse. The agents quietly injected mist into Curry. Pietro and Thor are now mortals. After a while, he fainted while drinking. When they woke up again, they had been sent to S.H.I.E.L.D. Pietro looked around, and there was nothing suspicious around. Here is a common bedroom. And just as he opened the door, Nick Fury was standing in front of him. Wait, young man, listen to me before leaving. Who are you? Why am I here? I invited you here because now you are nationally dangerous and need special care. Pietro was a little confused when he heard Nick Fury's words. What? Why are we a nationally dangerous person? Pietro was still about to play dumb. Okay, don't pretend to be Pietro, we have cooperation with the self-respecting Mage Russell, we all know about you. Now, I mainly want to invite you to join an organization, because your identities are very special now. Nick Fury said. What you need now is an officially recognized identity to be able to come and go freely. Pietro heard what Nick Fury meant, and he must join. Helpless, Pietro can only join this organization first. Pietro actually thinks very simple, join this organization first, then it is not up to him to decide what to do afterwards. When Nick Fury heard that Pietro agreed, he didn't say anything more. He told him the current situation directly, when Pietro heard the members and Tony Stark. He just realized what kind of organization he joined, and it didn't sound so bad. And Thor at the moment is also in a separate bedroom, but Thor is still very depressed after waking up. He didn't know what he should do to lift the hammer again, and after thinking about it for a while Thor stopped thinking about these questions. Looking at the unfamiliar environment around him, Thor was a little overwhelmed, he didn't know what to do. And at the moment Nick Fury opened the door and walked in. Hi Thor, I'm Nick Fury. I want to invite you to join the League of Worried Fathers. Not interested in. Thor turned Nick Fury down without even thinking about it. Don't be in a hurry to deny it, just listen to me first. The protection on Earth is too weak now, so I thought of setting up a small team to deal with some abnormal events. And you are a more suitable candidate, you should think about it carefully. What are you thinking about? I can't even lift a hammer now, it's useless at all. Thor lowered his head and said lightly. You join the alliance first, and I'll take care of the rest. Whatever. Thor was very casual and didn't care much about these things. Nick Fury looked at Thor's appearance and didn't say anything more. And at the moment Pietro came in from the door, pulled Thor and walked out. Nick Fury didn't stop him either, allowing the two of them to walk out of the Trident building together. Looking at the two of them, Russell looked into the distance. If there is no accident, someone will come to make trouble, but it is estimated that they can help them both. And at the moment, Toth, an officer who is manipulating the army, orders the soldiers. After Murphy Toss suffered a big loss before, he disappeared for a while, but Murphy Toss did not send any news. But he has been trying to find a way to do things. With Murphy Toth's consistent style, he will never sit still. He also knew that Thor was once again dropped by Odin to practice in Midgard. This time is when Thor is most vulnerable to injury. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Murphy Toss is ready to do something. If Thor can be killed, then Asgard will definitely be in chaos, and the balance will be broken at that time. At that time, I'm afraid even Russell might not have the time to take care of him. It has to be said that Fido's calculation was very good. But whether it can be achieved is another matter. After all, many times the ideal is very beautiful, but the reality is very skinny. At the moment Thor and Pietro were still chatting without saying a word. Unaware that they have been targeted by the army, at the moment many guns have been aimed at the two of them. Almost all escape routes were blocked. Obviously, they are well aware of Pietro's ability. What are you going to do now, Thor ? Let's talk about this matter later, I don't really want to think about these issues now. Speaking of, Thor turned his head to the side. Suddenly Thor's eyes were shaken by a reflection. Thor realized something and suddenly shouted, "Be careful." Before Pietro could react to what was going on, he realized that he was standing in front of him. His body was covered in blood. Pietro stared blankly at Thor, who fell to the ground and lost his voice and roared angrily, moving fast, knocking everyone down in one breath. Back to Thor. Pietro was a little lost. In just an instant, he lost the friend he had just met. At this moment, Pietro grew up, and his heart grew up at the moment when Thor fell in front of him. It's just that he didn't notice Mjolnir where he fell, already trembling slightly. Suddenly, Mjolnir flew out with a jerk. A burst of tearing air sounds passed, Mjolnir came back, and Thor stood up slowly at the moment. The armor on his body also slowly reorganized at this moment. Power is back. Thor looked at Mjolnir in his hand and seemed to understand something. He looked up. He seemed to understand why Odin put him here. Just to let him understand this truth, he lost his eyes due to the battle before. The most fundamental things are ignored. Now, Thor has really grown up. Pietro, too, looks at Thor with Mjolnir in his hand. Pietro was very happy from the bottom of his heart. Congratulations, Thor, you made it. Now, we have to find out who is going to kill us. Thor looked around. The hammer in his hand also emitted bursts of thunder, and the sky was suddenly covered with dark clouds. I just knocked everyone down, Pietro said. No, it's not them. The real behind-the-scenes people haven't come out. Thor looked around vigilantly, but after looking for a while, he didn't find anything unusual. Only then did he slowly put away the hammer, and return to the Trident building with Pietro. At the moment Nick Fury is already rage, and Nick Fury has seen the scene just now. He was very surprised by the appearance of these soldiers. He had clearly explained the situation to the military before. But it doesn't seem to be working now. So desperate, Nick Fury found the military and asked them for an explanation. It's just that after Nick Fury called, the mastermind behind the scenes had already left. The puppet Spoon, who didn't remember anything, was left behind. However, Murphy Toss still showed his feet and showed his breath in the last kick. Although he restrained himself quickly, it was only a little bit. It was enough for Russell to track him down. Following the clues, Russell discovered the entrance of the bank's manipulation. This entrance still has the power of Murphy Toth left. Russell was not polite either, directly facing this small entrance and began to absorb power. There is a small universe behind Russell, and he needs a lot of power. Usually, there is no such luck, and the general dimension space is very strong. And if the entrance is opened, Russell can definitely perceive it. But the entrance that Russell found now is at best a gap in space. Insignificant, almost impossible to perceive. It was also Russell's luck to find this place. Although Russell could foresee the danger, he couldn't predict such an entrance. This time when he found this entrance, Russell was not polite, and directly guided his own small universe to start absorbing power. Murphytos, whose consciousness had just returned to his own dimension, was speechless at the moment. Obviously he had already killed Thor, but he regained Mjolnir's approval by mistake. Although a little upset, Murphy Toss calmed down and pretended nothing happened. It's just that when he was about to recover his strength, he felt that his strength was slowly losing. Although the speed of is very slow, it is indeed losing. Following the direction, Murphytos looked at the small hole he made before. The keen Murphy Toth quickly realized a problem. I was just discovered. The other party followed me all the way. And at the moment, Toss heard a voice he never wanted to hear in his life. Murphy Toss, stay safe. Since you have done something bad, I will collect some interest. As Russell spoke, he accelerated the speed of absorption. Now Murphy Toth panicked. While begging for mercy, he quickly tried to find a way to plug this gap. This guy is simply too scary, almost pervasive. Listening to Murphy Toth begging for mercy, Russell didn't stop. On the contrary, he speeded up. He knew Murphy Toth's character. Like Dormammu, words cannot be trusted. For this situation, Russell is determined not to be soft. Murphy Toss saw that the suction power increased instead of decreasing, so he didn't say anything more immediately. Concentrate all your strength to quickly fill up the hole. After making up for it, the horrible suction just now disappeared. After all this, Murphy Toss finally breathed a sigh of relief. This Supreme Mage is really terrifying. New York. Trident Building. S.H.I.E.L.D. Pietro and Thor, who were just out, have returned to S.H.I.E.L.D. Nick Fury had just recruited Pietro, and on the way back, Pietro introduced and explained to Thor again. But when he heard that Tony Stark had also joined the League of Worried Fathers, Wayner's hesitant attitude changed instantly. He remembered clearly that this Tony Stark was the apprentice of Supreme Mage Russell. That is a Supreme Mage known as Myth. Thor has no further hesitation and is ready to join the League of Worried Fathers. And at the moment Nick Fury was also called back by Russell. At the same time, he also informed Thor's current situation and gave Nick Fury a wink. This Nick Fury saw Russell's expression and immediately understood what Russell meant. Immediately rushed back to S.H.I.E.L.D. As a result, as soon as I entered S.H.I.E.L.D., I saw Thor and Pietro sitting on the sofa. Is Nick director Nick Fury? I joined the League of Worried Fathers you mentioned earlier. Happy cooperation. Nick Fury held out his hand with a smile. And at the moment, in an open space in the conference room, a circle suddenly appeared. Tony's figure emerged from the circle. He's here to get Thor and Pietro. Just now Russell suddenly appeared in his laboratory and asked him to go to S.H.I.E.L.D. to pick up these two people. Helpless, Tony could only stop what he was doing, and drew a circle to pick up people from S.H.I.E.L.D. When Thor saw Tony, he nodded, and Tony smiled too. To Nick Fury. I took them both. As he spoke, he drew a circle again, pulling both Thor and Pietro into the circle. At the moment Nick Fury was so delighted that he could barely close his mouth from ear to ear. He didn't expect that his alliance of fathers and fathers would gain 2 generals in just this one. This is much simpler than the previous recruitment. As expected, you still have to hold on to Supreme Mage's thigh. Wakanda. Tony took Thor and Pietro to Bifrost. Thor looked at Bifrost in front of him, and looked at everything in front of him with some surprise. Is this Bifrost? Yes, this is Bifrost, and it leads to your homeland, Asgard. Tony pointed to the portal at the end. Go Thor, your family is waiting for you. Thor looked at Pietro beside him, just getting along with him for a while. Thor has become very good brothers with Pete Luo. To be separated so suddenly, Thor is actually a little bit reluctant. Pietro is the same, full of reluctance to Thor. It's just that Asgard is his real home. However, he believes that this is only a temporary separation. And with this Bifrost, there is no need to worry too much about unseen problems. Watching Thor's figure gradually disappear in the portal, there have been some subtle changes in Pietro's heart. Tony on the side said to him, "Let's go." Tony looked at Pietro beside him. Pietro stared at Bifrost tightly. After a long time, the group slowly turned around and followed behind Tony. The two returned to the laboratory together, and Tony directly opened the wall in front of Pietro. Pietro's eyes straightened. Tony on the side also started to introduce Pietro. This is a set of armor tailored for you. The whole body is made of vibranium, which is even better than the armor of the Iron Mage. In addition, the armor is equipped with an accelerator, which can allow you to have a faster speed, and you can figure out other functions slowly. Tony said to Pietro, "You mean, this armor is for me?" Pietro opened his eyes wide and looked at Tony beside him. "That's right, that's it. This is your gift for joining the League of Worried Fathers." Tony waved his hand and said, "Okay, go try it out. Tell me if there's anything inappropriate, and I'll improve it." As he said that, Tony pressed the remote control in his hand, and the barrier outside the armor also disappeared. Pietro immediately rushed up, looking like he couldn't put it down. Asgard, above the holy place. Odin sits on the throne, waiting for Thor to return. Just now he had seen Russell send Thor to Bifrost. Definitely he also saw that Thor had joined the League of the Worried Fathers. It's just that he didn't take this organization seriously. Thor is the future master of Asgard. Naturally, Asgard's affairs are more important. At the moment Thor has also come outside the hall, and slowly walked into the minister of the hall. Seeing Odin and Frigga, Frigga's eyes were full of tenderness. Odin at the moment also smiled very happily. Seeing Thor's appearance, he was very satisfied. This time Thor can be said to have passed the test. Without too many words, just a look, Thor knew what his father meant. "Thor, go and rest first." As he spoke, he waved to Thor, and Thor didn't say much, and walked out of the hall directly. When Thor walked out of the hall, Frigga looked at Odin. "Why did you let Thor go out directly? He just came back." Odin watched Thor's receding figure. This time is the process of making him independent. A king is destined to be lonely on the road. He has to adapt to the process. Frigga looked into the distance, her eyes were full of tenderness. Kamar Taj. Russell watched Thor enter Bifrost and didn't look at it again. This time it was really a bumper harvest. This string of Farins not only helped Thor and Pietro. It also contributed a lot to Russell's own small universe. It really made Russell beautiful. Russell had only predicted that someone would come to make trouble, but he didn't expect it to be a courier. And it's still buy one get one free. This wave really made Russell happy. Not only did Thor succeed in turning salty fish over, Pietro also grew up. Tony also equipped Pietro with the latest armor. This is really a complete victory. It's just that Loki is an uncertain factor, and Russell has some headaches. There are a lot of secrets about him, the first of which is what is the secret of him being grasped by the purple sweet potato essence Mage. And the mysterious power on him. Russell always felt that there was something secretly manipulating everything. Carrie Star. Thanos looked at the Infinity Gauntlet in his hand, feeling infinite emotion in his heart. I don't know when the plan to collect infinite gems will be completed. The current situation is still relatively severe for Thanos, and many people in the Carrie Empire are not optimistic about him. The Supreme Intelligence's trust in him is also obviously not as good as before. And the Loki he puts next to Russell doesn't work as well as he should. Now it is very difficult to open the plane channel. If you want to open the plane channel, the first thing is to have a large force zone to support the channel. After the previous battle, the Kree Empire will definitely not open the channel again. That would really be self-defeating, although the attacking party would probably be seriously injured. But if the Kree Empire opened the channel, the position would be different. So this matter can only be handed over to the internal staff to open the channel from Midgard. In this way, it will be much easier to deal with. But the problem now is that Loki is being watched almost in real time. Don't talk about opening the channel, it is very difficult to find something with such a large energy. It's almost at a dead end now. We can only wait for Russell's side to relax vigilance against Loki's side before trying to figure out a solution. And Russell also came to Iqui's space. Russell thought it was better to show Iqui the material of the wand he got before. Iqui was born in the dwarf tribe. Maybe Iqui will know the origin of this material. As soon as Russell came in, Iqui greeted him. Since coming to this space, Iqui's people are very satisfied with the current environment, which is much better than the previous environment. And there is no need to switch frequently, dwarfs like this feeling very much. Iqui is also very happy, having the shelter of the Supreme Mage. It can be said that he is more at ease than the shelter of Odin. As soon as he felt Russell's breath approaching the side of the space, Iqui immediately opened the space and welcomed Russell in. Mage, you are here. Iqui became a lot more polite when talking to Russell. Do you still have the habit of living here? It's pretty good, the clansmen like it very much. That's good. Here I have a piece of material that I have never seen before. Let's see if you recognize it. Russell said as he took out the previously broken staff. Huh? Iqui took the staff, looked at it carefully, and tested the hardness with his hands. Immediately his eyes filled with excitement. Mage, where did you get this material map? Seeing that Iqui suddenly became excited, Russell also said. I found this inside a planet. At that time, there was still a will left on the staff, so I annihilated it. Sure enough. I knew it, Iqui said excitedly. Russell Mage, the material of your staff is an extremely special material. Iqui took a breath and said roughly. This material is a material that can hold enormous forces, and it's highly amplified. How strong it is depends on the level of forging and the user's ability. Iqui put the materials on the ground while talking. Russell Mage, now, use your strength to send a little power to this staff and see what happens. Russell sent a little bit of power suspiciously, but it turned out that Russell had just sent Liwang. The magic staff suddenly burst into light, covering Russell. Russell at the moment was a little surprised. He seemed to be trapped by the light and couldn't move at all. What's even more strange is that the light just now is still approaching, getting closer and closer to Russell. But Russell couldn't move, and the power of it at the moment couldn't be used. You can only watch the light gradually approaching. At the moment Russell almost tried his best, but couldn't get rid of the shackles of this light. Seeing the light that was already close at hand, Russell was relieved. He didn't expect that he would be trapped here by a ball of light. Russell had closed his eyes, waiting quietly, but the pain he expected did not come. I didn't feel any discomfort in my body, just a warm feeling. And the shackles on my body are slowly disappearing, which feels wonderful. And Russell also has a feeling that he seems to be getting hotter and hotter. As soon as this idea popped into his mind, the heat suddenly increased, and the power in Russell's body also began to feel uneasy. Constantly turbulent, making Russell very nervous, but at the moment Russell only felt one thing, that was heat. It was hot from the inside out, and Iqui quietly watched the changes in Russell. His eyes were full of blazing heat. In his eyes, Russell didn't actually move. At the moment he was shrouded in light. What he experienced just now was just an illusion, but now he is frowning. Along with the feeling of heat, Russell's own breath also underwent some subtle changes. Although there has been no change in strength, Russell now feels a little bit unpredictable. It is now in Russell's small universe, so Russell's breath has not leaked out. If it was in Midgard, there would be more people moving. The light quickly dimmed, and Russell's burning sensation slowly disappeared. At the moment Russell was sweating, almost soaking his clothes. Russell opened his eyes suddenly, the staff in his hand had disappeared, and he was still in Iqui's space. Iqui was looking at Russell with a smile on his face. "Russell Mage, how are you feeling?" "Fortunately, it's just a little hot." Russell looked at Iqui with a smile on his face, feeling a little strange. "Russell Mage, take a good look at your strength." Hearing what Iqui said, Russell quickly checked his body. He suddenly found that at the moment that just disappeared had appeared in body. And this staff seems to be a phantom, and when Russell's consciousness looks at the law, Russell suddenly felt that the staff seemed to be able to change shape. Just as he was thinking, the staff directly changed a shape into the shape of a sword. But Russell also found a situation. That is, the control of power seems to have become more freely. To put it simply, it is one's own ability to control power more flexibly. There is also this material in my body that I don't know what to call it. At the moment Iqui also said, "Now you feel that something has changed in you. What's going on here? Why did it become like this? What exactly is this?" "Now I'm even more curious about what this is." "This is a good thing. I saw this thing at the same time, but the name of this thing has been passed down for a long time. It's actually harder than vibranium, it just doesn't show it normally." Iqui said, "Memory metal, strictly speaking, it is not a metal, it is a unique medium." "What? Unique medium? What do you mean?" Russell was a little confused. "That is, its plasticity is very high, but if you add force to it, it will become very hard. You should also have a deep understanding of this point," Iqui said. Indeed, Russell did understand some of these things. When Russell first discovered it before, it was indeed very hard in texture. There is no doubt about this point. When Russell wiped out the will on it, it just didn't work. Now Russell really knows. Great love is still a baby? That's for sure. It is estimated that there are not many Shendu among those dimensions that have this thing. Iqui approached Russell and whispered. Now the memory metal has entered Russell's body. As long as Russell doesn't use it, others can't see it. It's just that with this thing, I'm afraid it will become a hidden danger in the future. Russell has this premonition. This thing is hidden so deeply, there must be something hidden. But Russell is the master who is not afraid of anything this day. Never been scared. Kamar Taj. Russell has been studying how to use this thing since he came back. Russell experimented many times and found that this thing can be transformed into what Russell imagined according to Russell's own mind. This change can be said to be very good, and most importantly, this memory metal can increase the mastery of power. Specifically because of what Russell is not very clear. It looks like it was left by the previous owner of this memory metal. Just happened to be used by Russell. And this thing is very magical. Maybe it can summon thunder and lightning like Mjolnir in the future. According to the property of this memory metal, it can be realized. This memory metal can originally hold a very large magical power, so it is completely feasible to say the power of the thunder and lightning. But the power of the thunder and lightning can, and the power of other elements can also be realized. New York, Trident Building. Shield. Tony sat on the sofa, looking at Nick Fury across the way. Without speaking, a photo hung behind Nick Fury. Above, Tony's father and several partners stand in the most conspicuous position in the middle. Nick Fury looked at Tony, also silent. At the moment Nick Fury has a headache. Although Tony is recruited, no one can control him. This is a real headache for Nick Fury, and he doesn't know what to do. There's no way to get in touch with Nick Fury on Russell's side, unless Russell reaches out to Nick Fury himself. Otherwise Nick Fury would have little chance of meeting Russell. Facing Tony, Nick Fury can only face the difficulties. If Tony can't handle it, I'm afraid the League of Worried Fathers is a mess. Tony, who do you think is the most suitable captain? I don't think there is any need to discuss this issue. The position of captain is the most suitable for me. Tony recommended himself directly, and Nick Fury was taken aback for a while. But right now, there is really no better candidate. But Nick Fury didn't respond to Tony's words either. Just let Tony out first. For Tony, Nick Fury still thinks it is better to listen to other people's opinions. The rest of the people asked Nick Fury one by one. It turned out that Tony was the captain. On this point, the League of Worried Fathers is basically united. Everyone thinks that Tony's ability is enough to be the captain. Nick Fury can only give Tony down first, but he is the acting captain. There is still a certain assessment period, and Tony doesn't care about these things. His focus wasn't on this father-worried alliance, and now Tony was a mage. The current Iron Mage originally has a strong combat power. However, everyone in the League of Worried Fathers also needs a little exercise, or wait until the real crisis comes. They will fall like flowers in a greenhouse, but Tony didn't want that day to come. Russell watched Nick Fury and the others silently. The current situation is getting more and more serious, and there is an urgent need for a team of people who can hold the field to appear on the Earth. You can't just rely on Russell's side. Sometimes Russell's side is not suitable for shooting. At that time, the Earth is considered to be in real danger. That's why Russell let Tony join the League of Worried Fathers. And most importantly, Nick Fury seems to know Carol. That's enough for Tony to start building the League of Worried Fathers. But Tony didn't seem to know this very well, and Russell couldn't tell him directly. I can only find a way to tell Tony about this matter. Asgard, since Thor came back from Midgard this time, his mind has become much brighter, and he has thought a lot about some things. Before Thor always thought about fighting, he felt that fighting was the best solution. But he really came to his senses when he was shot and fell to the ground. Why do you say that war is cruel? Even if you win the war, you will suffer a great loss. In the few days when Thor returned to Asgard, Thor was thinking about this question every day. Now it's time to really grow up. At the same time, Thor is also preparing to take advantage of the current time to fight his skills. If the previous Thor was a little inferior, according to the current Thor is very confident. Odin can see this change, and it is obvious that Thor has changed a lot since he came back this time. It's a bit unrecognizable that this is Thor from before. Frigga looked at Thor's appearance, a little distressed, but also a little happy. Although Thor suffered a lot of difficulties this time, he still survived. Although Frigga feels sorry for Thor, she also understands that if she goes through wind and rain, Thor can't be great. Even if it's cruel, Odin must do it, for Thor's sake, and for Asgard's. Odin has to do it all. Ms. Carol also arrived in Asgard at the moment, and she obviously had important matters to discuss this time. After entering Odin's hall all the way, Carol didn't say anything unnecessary. Straight to the point. There is a situation with Kreti. There was no news from the Supreme Intelligence before backquote. But when I went there to investigate, I didn't see anything. Chris Starr has disappeared. What? Chris disappeared? Odin was stunned when he heard the news. Odin hurriedly contacted the eyeliner he had planted in the Kree Empire. There was no response at all, as if it disappeared out of thin air. Now Odin panicked. The sudden disappearance of the Kree was not a good sign. This is obviously not a disaster, but a premeditated disappearance. Carol's expression is also very serious. The Kree Empire is playing with fire. If the location of the Kree Empire can be found now, Carol will definitely blow it up. But now there is indeed no trace of Carrie Starr in the place where Carrie Starr was before. It really seems to have disappeared out of thin air. Russell in Kamar Taj also discovered this situation, and Kree Starr suddenly disappeared. Definitely not the destruction of the planet itself. Because if the planet destroys itself, there will definitely be some wreckage left behind. And this Carrie Starr didn't, almost nothing happened, obviously just disappeared. Russell didn't think too much, and directly teleported to the vicinity of Carrie, observing for a while. Indeed, this Kree Starr didn't disappear by itself, or it was man-made. There is very intuitive evidence on the orbit of the planet, which is the remnant of power. This is the power of space. Since Russell absorbed the memory metal, his own perception has become much stronger. Some subtle power fluctuations and residues can also be found. This time the remnants on this planet's orbit are negligible. It felt like Russell already had a picture in mind. The Kree Empire should have used something. The entire Carrie planet has been transferred to another plane. To some extent, this Kree Starr is actually still here. It's just that they can't see it. Russell has never seen this situation before, and this is still handed over to the Wakanda people. See if they have any good ideas. Asgard. Both Odin and Carol looked at the empty space with serious faces. Suddenly, a circle appeared in front of them, and Russell walked out of the circle. Watch Odin and Carol. Russell said lightly. Chris went to another plane. To a certain extent they are still in this place. It's just that we in this plane can't see where they are. Another plane. Those passages have been closed as far as I know. Odin said. Those passages were permanently closed when I was young, and there will be no other way to enter. Don't talk too much. Everything is possible. You can throw Thor down again. What else is impossible? Listening to Carol's sarcasm, Odin smiled awkwardly. He did this in order to repair the relationship with Carol. Allies should show the appearance of allies. Don't think about the routine of kissing and kissing all day long. That's for sure, Odin said with a smile. What is certain now is that Carrie has indeed entered the plane that we cannot see. The specific method of getting in remains to be verified. This matter is very important. There must be some big conspiracy for Carrie to hide suddenly. And now that they're in our dead end, we're in a passive position now. Russell briefly analyzed the current situation. Now what we have to face is probably an unknown enemy. Odin seemed to remember something, and said lightly. In other planes, it's not just humans, dark elves, and frost trolls. These species exist in other planes. Other planes were used as real exiles before, but now it's a bit tricky. Russell has also heard the name of the frost troll, but the dark elf is indeed very ordinary. Odin also seemed to see out of Russell's mind. The dark elves there are not the dark elves you encountered before. Actually, the dark elves you meet can only be called black elves at most. The real dark elves are more than 3 times stronger than them. That's the real dark elves, but they haven't appeared for a long time, and everyone thought they were extinct. That's why the black elves are also called dark elves. What? So powerful. Carol on the side felt a little dizzy when he heard it, and thought that some dark elves or frost trolls would be difficult enough. As a result, there is another sentence that these dark elves are even more difficult to deal with. To add insult to injury, Carol's head got dizzy listening to Odin's story. Now the three have initially decided on a strategy. Odin hastened to recover, and Carol and Russell looked for the CCBB star. Wakanda. Russell brought the news to Tony, who was doing the experiment. What? This is tricky. Tony was also very depressed when he heard the news. He lowered his head and thought for a while. Listening to what Russell said, Tony probably understood. Then now we need to find a way to enter other planes, right? It can also be said that the current Carrie Empire is very dangerous if they master the method of traveling between planes. If the plane channel is open, the consequences will be disastrous. Listening to Russell's serious tone, Tony also paid attention to this matter. It's just that he has relatively little research on these areas of space, but he can still try it. Seeing that Tony has been involved in research, Russell himself did not stay long. Kamar Taj. Inside the holy place, Wanda and Pietro are practicing. After the strength last time, Pietro has obviously matured a lot. Wanda has practiced very well these days, and her grasp of chaos power is also much stronger than before. But it wasn't enough. Pietro saw Russell appear. Master Russell. Pietro shouted kindly, and Wanda also looked at Russell happily. She knew that the two of them could have the current strength entirely because of Lao Su. If Russell hadn't rescued them both from the ghetto, there would never be them now. The training is very good, but it is not enough. We estimate that a strong enemy will come soon. You should step up your training. Russell looked at the two of them without saying anything more. Now Russell must improve his combat power as soon as possible. He felt that his current strength might not be enough to deal with the enemies in the past this time. Before hearing what Odin said before, Russell was still very confident. He felt that it should be enough to deal with them with his own strength, but now Russell didn't think so. The previous self was too arrogant, and he just realized that he had unconsciously entered that terrifying state. This was inadvertent, underestimating the opponent. This time it was Odin who reminded Russell in time. Otherwise, Russell himself wouldn't realize it, and now Russell feels a little scared when he thinks about it. I almost made a big mistake, underestimating the unknown enemy. This is Russell's biggest mistake. Although he can be called powerful now, there must be someone stronger than Russell. It's just that he didn't show up. This time Russell was quite frightened. Now he finally understood why Gug was diligent in practicing. Only by practicing continuously can you discover your own shortcomings and see your own shortcomings, and only in this way can you become stronger. Russell is indeed not as good as Ancient One in dealing with these issues. Although Ancient One has left, some of his behaviors are still affecting Russell in a subtle way. Although Russell's progress was rapid, but at that time Russell was very humble and didn't feel how strong he was. And when Ancient One asked him to be the Supreme Mage, Russell also repeatedly declined. At that time, Ancient One probably took a fancy to Russell's modesty. It's just that Russell has become a little arrogant now, but he has restrained it in time. But it's also because Russell has changed a bit too much recently, not only because he has harvested the extremely terrifying thing of the small universe. There are also artifacts such as memory metal. It was because of these things that Russell gradually became arrogant. Aware of these situations, Russell decided to give up these powers for the time being. Concentrate on improving your own strength. No matter how powerful these things are, they are only external forces. The improvement of one's own strength is the real strength. Carry Star. Thanos at the moment is negotiating a plan with the Supreme Intelligence. Ever since the Supreme Wisdom ordered the activation of the magical artifact, Carrie has arrived at the current plane directly from the previous place. Although the location has not moved in essence, everything around has changed. This is not the usual familiar universe anymore. There is a dark force everywhere here. Although the people of the Kree Empire had made full preparations before coming here. But it is clear that this is not enough, facing these unknown places. Just this little preparation is not enough, but the purpose of the Supreme Wisdom coming here is not to fight. The Supreme Intelligence has mastered this technology a long time ago, and it is able to transmit the entire Kree star to this place. It's just that at that time, the Kree Empire hadn't reached the present stage. But now, in order to carry out the next step of the plan, the Kree Empire can only do so. Although there are certain risks coexist with opportunities. The Kree Empire is now in ruins, and it depends on whether it succeeds or not. And not far from Carrie Star, groups of dark elves are staring at the sudden appearance of Carrie Star. There was a bloodthirsty light in the eyes, and in a distant place, there is another pair of ruthless eyes staring at Carrie Star closely. Kamar Taj. Holy place. Russell stood on the holy place, meditating with his eyes closed. According to Odin's words, Carrie is probably planning some big plan now. It's just that they directly transferred the planet to what kind of operation. Russell didn't understand this point, and Russell couldn't tell what kind of creatures there would be on that plane. It's just that the entrance to that plane has been sealed according to Odin. So how did the crystal disappear? Russell thought about it, but couldn't figure out what was going on. However, he remembered that he felt some power near the place where Carrie used to be. The power of space. It's just that there are not many people in the universe who can use the power of space. Russell counts as one, and the others don't know how to use the power of space even if they know a little bit. The power of this space is basically useless, and even Russell doesn't use it very often. Although it will be very useful if used well, but the helpless consumption is indeed a bit large. And with that consumption, it can be done with a few simple little magic. And the space magic this time is not just a simple space magic. This directly teleported the entire Carrie planet away. How did Kree Star cover up such a big battle? Just when Russell was still wondering what was going on. There was news from Tony. He seems to have found some clues. From the portal to Tony's location, Tony began to tell Russell. Russell Mage, look at this place is where Carrie disappeared. On the other side, after calculation, it was found that there are fluctuations in space. As he spoke, Tony drew a horizontal line on the star map. Look, it's here. If you want to deceive others, the space teleportation here is the best choice. This is almost a blind spot for surveillance. But it's not completely deceptive, Russell said. Indeed, just like this, it is impossible to disappear without warning and without any news. Unless they also made first-hand preparations. Thinking of this, Russell was a little surprised. He didn't have time to think about it, and immediately went to the direction Tony pointed to earlier. It's not too long now, if the relationship is really what Tony said. Then there will be clues left in that place now. Thinking of this, Russell was a little excited. If clues can be found, it will be one step closer to finding Carrie. Now, if you find Carrie Star one step earlier, there is less risk. Asgard. Above the palace. Odin looked at the star map in front of him, and looked at the sky outside the temple. He thought back to his youth, when that plane was closed, and Odin could feel the horrors of the war now. And now the uncertain factor of the Carrie Empire has entered that plane. There is no guarantee that this Supreme Intelligence will do anything crazy. Odin sat on the throne, his mind seemed to drift back to the time many years ago. Frigga on the side saw Odin's appearance and accompanied him. Carrie Star, the domain of the Dark Elves. Thanos is discussing cooperation with the Dark Elves. The Dark Elves are very proud. Weak human beings, what qualifications do you have to negotiate terms with me? Just because we can send you out of this plane, Thanos said. The emissaries sent by the Dark Elves thought for a moment, then suddenly went back. Looking at the Dark Elf's appearance, Thanos probably felt that he couldn't handle this matter. Go back and call the leader. This matter is no small matter. If they can get out from here, then the first day of the Dark Elves will come. It's just that Thanos isn't very emboldened here. Facing these Dark Elves, although the power outage has the entire Carey planet as its backing. But in the face of these powerful Dark Elves, I am afraid that even a Kree star is not enough to look at. Now Thanos regrets coming to this plane. He can't deal with the Dark Elves here at all. Now Thanos can only hope for the Supreme Intelligence, and he led the entire Kree star to this plane. There must be his plan. Thinking of this, Thanos didn't think too much. Now let's see what the Dark Elves mean. Facing a group of them, killing a room is really a 10,000 head day. And the people on Carey planet are not having a good time. Although they have been teleported here, there are too many uncertain factors here. And some of those Dark Elves have already sneaked into Carey star. Everyone knows these things, but they haven't been found out yet. After all, they are here to discuss cooperation, and this can be regarded as a concession made by the Kree Empire. After a while, the king of the Dark Elves came over. He's here to talk to Thanos about working together. Facing this purple sweet potato essence, the king of the Dark Elves is actually worthy. When we first met Thanos, he said directly to Thanos, "Let me out, half of the universe is yours." Straight to the point, Thanos was stunned. Looking at Thanos in front of him, the king of Dark Elves is very sure about this cooperation. But Thanos obviously hesitated. Looking at the frowning Thanos, the Dark Elf king was a little puzzled. What's the matter? Aren't the conditions generous enough? That's not true. What's that? What's the point of hesitation? Isn't that what you came here for? The Dark Elf king was strange, and he was now beginning to wonder what Thanos' purpose in coming here was. In fact, Thanos was waiting for the answer from the Supreme Wisdom, and after the King of Dark Elves said those words just now, the Supreme Intelligence obviously becomes hesitation. It wasn't until the King of the Dark Elves asked that sentence that he said it to Thanos. Promise him. It's just that Thanos was about to say yes, but the Dark Elf King said again. Then I'll add another 10% to you, 6 to 4 points, you 6 to 4, how about it? Thanos, who heard this result, was obviously a little confused. Thanos was still in a daze when he returned to Carey. But the Supreme Intelligence is calm. It is absolutely impossible to release all these Dark Elves, and we must also protect our core technology. The pair cannot fall into the hands of these Dark Elves. Otherwise, at that time, it will be a real disaster. Although the Supreme Wisdom makes dangerous moves, he will not do things that really make things out of control. He also knew in his heart that if all the Dark Elves really ran out, then sooner or later their Kree Empire would be wiped out by the Dark Elves. The Supreme Intelligence knows this well, and Thanos knows it too. Now Thanos is on the same side as the Supreme Intelligence. It's just that they don't know that Frost Titan is also ready to intervene. Although these Frost Titans disdain to recognize the Frost Titans who are now defeated by Odin. But they were also defeated by Odin, which is their shame. And they also saw Carey come to this plane this time. When Kaka, the leader of the Frost Titans, saw this planet, he knew that the opportunity for the Frost Titans had come. It's just that Frost Titan also saw the Dark Elves who were negotiating with Carey. These Dark Elves are not a good stubble either. After so many years in this plane, there has actually been a lot of friction between the two races. But it's all small troubles, and they can't get on the stage, so this time the Frost Titans are also preparing to intervene. It's just that the Carey Empire has not agreed to talk to the Frost Titans. Now the situation has gradually become more complicated, and only one Dark Elf is difficult enough. Now comes a Frost Titan. This is not an easy master to mess with. After fighting against Asgard for so many years, it is still just a branch of Frost Titan. And now the Kree Empire is facing the real Frost Titan before, and the pressure is not ordinary. Especially now that the Frost Titans also want to go out to seek revenge on Asgard. Now things are probably going out of control. Thanos saw that the people on both sides had met and were simply communicating. He also has a big head, and it is impossible to pass too many people at the door of space at one time. Therefore, the number of the two races has to be limited. Looking at the two tribes, Thanos took a deep breath and said to the kings of the two sides. Now the gate of space must control the number of people, otherwise the gate of space will become unstable and collapse. Everyone is F***ked. This sentence is very weighty. once Thanos finished speaking. The kings of both sides were silent. After all, if they were discovered, then their renewed hope would also be shattered. Thinking of this, the kings of both parties compromised. Then it depends on what you want. We will do what you want when you come. But this is equivalent to lending the army under his command to the Kree Empire. The cooperation is reached, and the rest is the preparation work. Carey Planet Periphery. Russell at the moment has come to the orbit before Carey disappeared. Soon he found the place Tony had pointed him to earlier. It's just that as soon as Russell got close to that place, he felt a huge space energy. The power of this space is so great that it is simply incomparable to the power of space that Russell perceived before. Feeling this kind of power, this proves that all the conjectures after the previous have come true. But how on earth did they teleport Carey away? Russell was really puzzled by this question. Looking at the deep universe, Russell thought about it. He remembered the space hole that Murphy Toth had made before. Did the Kree Empire successfully teleport to another plane through a space loophole? If this is the case, it is indeed possible, but it is likely to be dangerous. This kind of vulnerability is extremely unstable, and Murphy Toth did that at the time because he was in his own space. Don't worry about the instability, but the Kree Empire is not the same as Murphy Toth. There are quite a few things they need to worry about, so the only possibility is that they have strengthened the loopholes. However, if they strengthened the loopholes, they would definitely leave some traces. Thinking of this, Russell hastily inspected the area, but didn't find anything strange. This is a bit strange. Russell looked at the furnishings here and thought for a long time. He didn't know what to do, and he was also very strange about these things. These are really unreasonable. But at this time, the system suddenly popped up to sign in. This makes Russell a little happy. This signing is really well timed. And this sign-in location is the old site of Carey Star, which is here. Ding. The sign-in is successful, and you will get the sign-in reward. Ding. The sign-in reward has arrived. 1 space crack detector. Suddenly, a needle-like thing appeared in Russell's hand, which quickly merged into Russell's body. Gradually disappeared, and Russell lost consciousness the moment he got the space crack detector. After integrating, he slowly woke up. The space crack detector in his hand was gone, replaced by the perception in Russell's mind. Standing here now, Russell can feel a lot of cracks in space, no matter where there have been cracks before or where cracks have already appeared. Russell could see everything clearly. Soon, Russell's eyes focused on the place where he just felt the big space energy. It's just that Russell surprised himself with this look. Russell took a closer look just now, and there is indeed a space crack here, but it has been reinforced and repaired. It can't be seen from the outside, but in Russell's eyes, this space can actually be opened. In other words, this space crack has been transformed into a door. When Russell saw this, his head was a little big. This was transformed into a door, but how to seal it was a problem. Moreover, it is still unclear whether Carey Star teleported and disappeared here. Russell is still not sure of this. At the moment, Ms. Carroll also flew to the outskirts of Carey and saw the figure of Supreme Mage Russell. Russell also saw Ms. Carroll. After a brief introduction to the situation here, the two began to look for space cracks separately. It's just that Ms. Carroll's speed is a bit slow, and Russell's judgment on space cracks is not as accurate. But there is one thing that Russell can't compare with, that is experience. Ms. Carroll has much more experience than Russell. After all, it hasn't been long since Russell became Supreme Mage. Qualifications and so on naturally cannot be compared with these veteran generals. New York, Trident Building, S.H.I.E.L.D. The people from the League of Fearful Fathers have arrived at the moment, and everyone's face is serious now. Tony was standing in front of everyone, talking about what they were about to encounter. The Frost Titan and the Dark Elves are likely to come. At that time, it's time for us to really fight hard. Listening to Tony's speech, the members all sneered. How long has it been since the Earth has experienced such a time, and now it is suddenly said that someone is going to attack? They all couldn't believe it, but they listened to Tony's serious speech. They still chose to believe Tony's words for the time being. Nick Fury at the moment is taking stock of Earth. He also already knew the situation the Earth was facing, and all they had to do now was to prepare for battle. With human strength, it is still very difficult to face this unknown enemy. Meanwhile, Wakanda is getting ready for battle. Russell's steel mages are also gearing up, ready for battle. Asgard. Thor has just come out of the holy place, according to Odin's instructions. With the team assembled, Odin just got a message from Russell. He and Carol discovered a suspected space crack and transformed it into a space gate. Now it can only be ready to fight at any time. Now relying on personal strength, there is no way to go to another plane. I don't know what's going on there. They just discovered the door of this space, but they have no way to seal the door of this space. This gate of space seems to have been sealed with some special seals by the Kree Empire, and there is no way to directly contact the gate of space from the outside. The safest way is to be prepared first. So Russell hastened to inform, and almost everyone started to act. Now Russell and Carol have more important tasks. That is to check whether there are other space gates nearby. Because according to the consistent style of the Kree Empire, it is impossible to have only one space gate. There must be some deep secret passages hidden. Now Russell and Carol are looking for these possible space gates or space loopholes. This critical moment must not be taken lightly. To deal with the Kree Empire, one must be cautious and cautious. What's more, the Kree Empire may still have Dark Elves and Frost Titans standing beside them. Both of these are existences that cannot be underestimated. Carrie Starr. Thanos at the moment was a little shocked. He originally thought that the difference between the Dark Elves on this plane and the Dark Elves on the previous plane was at most a difference in strength. But now he doesn't think so, because when he saw the uniform equipment of the Dark Elves, he was a little confused. This equipment, this is too sophisticated. I saw that every Dark Elf was wearing armor, and this armor was nothing ordinary at first glance. The shiny black light flickered constantly on the entire armor. The black hole grenade on the waist is obviously much more advanced than what Thanos has seen before. Looking at it this way, it seems that the Dark Elves in their own world are not called Dark Elves at all. This difference is not even a little bit, it is a big difference. There is also the Frost Titan, which seems to be no different from the Frost Titan in his own world. But the magical aura on them is arguably the strongest Thanos has ever seen. Not one of them. Thanos is very thankful that the Supreme Intelligence left behind, and didn't let all these people go out. Otherwise, I couldn't control the scene at all, and watched these people walk towards the battleship one by one, slowly heading towards the exit. A tinge of awe rose in Thanos. He couldn't help being a little worried about Russell and the others. Compared to facing these Dark Elves, there were Frost Titans. Thanos would rather fight Russell and the others. But now the ending is the best. Let the Dark Elves and the Frost Titan and watch them fight. Then when it was near the end, I would send people out to reap the benefits of the fishermen. I have to say that the Kree Empire's calculations are very good. But neither the Dark Elves nor the Frost Titans are idiots, and their premise is that Thanos will follow suit. There are still people left behind on Carrie Starr, if the Dark Elves and Frost Titan turn against each other. The Carrie Empire is not afraid, and it will die directly. Definitely Dark Elf and Frost Titan are smart people, they definitely wouldn't do such a thing. After staying here for so many years, no matter how stupid an idiot is, it's time for him to understand. The army is ready. As soon as the door of space is opened, the battle will officially start. Russell is still looking for loopholes here. However, I checked all the nearby spaces, and I didn't find the same space crack as before that was transformed into a space door. It seems that the Kree Empire only has this one space gate. Russell and Carol had just greeted each other and returned to the holy place. It sensed that there was a change near the former Carrie Starr. At the same time, Odin also felt it very keenly. Here they come. Here they come. Thor under the temple listened to his father's words and squeezed Mjolnir in his hand. He knew that war was coming. Kamatai G. Iron Mage is also fully armed and ready for battle. The League of Worried Fathers is also ready to fight. Carol had also arrived, and after a while, Russell felt the fluctuations in the space. Suddenly, a battleship teleported to the sky above the Earth. All Steel Mage in Kamar Taj teleported to Earth at once. In preparation for the battle, the evacuation of the common crowd has also begun. Facing these unknown enemies, Russell commanded the army to prepare for defense. Soon the enemies on the battleship came down. Wearing a black armor, it seems that he came prepared. Looking at the Steel Mage in front of him, and the warrior of the Wakanda tribe. These black warriors took off their helmets, revealing the unique skin color of the Dark Elves. I saw them take a deep breath. Put the helmet back on. Fresh air, wonderful. After speaking, they drew their weapons, but the sharp-eyed Russell saw the black hole grenade pinned to the waist of these Dark Elves at a glance. Quickly beckoned, and Pietro on the side also put on the steel battlesuit. Wanda is also holding the origin magic power in her hand, always ready to fight. With the charge of the Dark Elves, the battle between the two sides was very fierce, although the black hole grenades of these Dark Elves were very powerful. However, with Pietro around, This black hole grenade hardly has a very big effect, but this black hole grenade doesn't seem to have any effect on the Dark Elves. This is indeed something that the big guys didn't expect, and the League of Fathers and Fathers has also joined the battle. The battle was so fierce that a single Dark Elf soldier stood against warrior of 3 Wakanda tribes. It is amazing in terms of combat effectiveness. And Russell has been staring at the battleship, and he feels that there is a more powerful presence on the battleship that has not come yet. Russell felt like he was waiting for an opportunity. At the same time, Asgard also ushered in a battleship, and the one who dismounted from the battleship was Asgard's sworn enemy. Frost Titans, except that these Frost Titans are obviously unfamiliar faces, and Odin looks at them. I'm afraid this is a Frost Titan from another plane, so be careful. At the moment Thor also felt something was wrong. These Frost Titans were not like the Frost Titans he had encountered before. These Frost Titans are obviously stronger than the previous Frost Titans, and they exude power from their bodies. Really stronger than most people. The people of Asgard don't seem to be much of a threat to them. Odin at the moment is also holding the gun of eternity, ready to fight. On the Frost Titan side, a taller and stronger Frost Titan also came out. Odin looked at the Frost Titan, a little surprised. Ogysis? It seems you haven't forgotten me, Odin, stay safe. The Frost Titan opened his mouth, seeing Odin's surprised look, the icicles on his hand condensed. Odin's eternal spear is also aimed at Ogysis, and the battle is on the verge of breaking out. Following the charge of the 2 coaches, the 2 teams behind them also began to fight. In the beginning, the Frost Titans were more dominant. Thor also fought very hard, and the attacks of these Frost Titans were very fierce. And most importantly, the cooperation between their attacks is very good. It is often possible to seal Thor's position, and you are almost attacked by several Frost Titans several times. It was Thor who summoned the power of Mjolnir in time, and paralyzed these Frost Titans in time. That's what knocked them down. It's just that the casualties on the Asgard side at the moment are a bit high, and there are basically no people on the Frost Titan side. Odin and Ogysis are still inseparable. Both sides come and go, and it is almost impossible to tell the winner. In the end, Ogysis stopped first. He looked at Odin and said lightly, Odin, you are no longer young. After finishing speaking, he turned and left. In this battle, Asgard narrowly won, and the Frost Titan retreated. But Odin knew that this was just the beginning, and the real battle had just begun. At the moment Ms. Carol has just arrived. Looking at the corpses all over the ground, Carol was furious. But at the moment Odin stopped her. Take it easy, they're not common Frost Titans. It wasn't as who won just now, but the Frost Titan retreated by itself. The same is true for the Dark Elves. The leader of the Dark Elves never came down from above. But just that Dark Elf soldier was enough for Russell and the others to eat a pot. Russell didn't move. Because he knew that if he moved, the leader of the Dark Elves would come down. At that time, it still couldn't turn the tide of the battle. Now we can only look at the strength of the Iron Mage and our fellow Earthlings. Like the Frost Titans, these Dark Elf soldiers were not interested in fighting, they seemed to be just testing. But just to test it out, Russell also suffered a lot of casualties. Wait until these Dark Elves completely retreat. Russell immediately teleported to Asgard, ready to interview Odin. It's just that he just arrived in Asgard when he saw Asgard's people cleaning the battlefield. Seeing the devastation all over the place, Russell knew that this place also experienced a big battle just now. Walking into the main hall, Odin sat tiredly on the throne, and Carol sat below. Thor also stood below with a serious face, and there were still many wounds on his body. Seeing this, Russell also understood something. Is it a Frost Titan? Yes, it's the Frost Titan in that plane. Your side should be the Dark Elves. That's right, it's just that the people of the Kree Empire didn't show up. Russell said. This is very strange, and their battle this time does not seem to be for the purpose of fighting. They are more like a test, and they came to such a sudden attack just to test us. Odin nodded as well. In this situation, it's really hard to guess. To be honest, I don't understand what they mean by this. Testing. It doesn't seem to be. What it is Odin himself can't figure it out. Carol was also a little confused. This sudden attack really made people puzzled. In short, the Dark Elves and Frost Titans have receded, we should hurry up and get ready for the next battle. Russell said that just now these people are obviously not many in number. The latter estimate is the main course, and at that time is the time for the real war. It's true, what we should do now is to hurry up and prepare. Odin said and stood up. Thor, gather our team now and prepare for the second battle. Russell also returned to Earth and summoned Mordo and others. Russell Mage, our losses are huge, and the Steel Mages also suffered varying degrees of casualties. These Dark Elves are too ferocious. Mordo told Russell about the battle losses just now. Just such a group of people caused the Earth to suffer heavy losses, and the losses of Wakanda's tribe were even greater than that of Russell's here. Seeing this, Russell couldn't sit still anymore. If this level continues, the Earth will end sooner or later. I can no longer hide and hide. I must do my best to deal with the invasion of this Dark Elf. Russell is also ready to use those forbidden powers. Tong Yi told Russell when he took over the post of Supreme Mage. The power of Taboo should not be used lightly unless it is absolutely necessary. But under the current situation, Russell can only be ready to use it. Right now Russell's small universe is not ready for battle. Still in the growth stage, what is needed is a lot of energy. But Russell suddenly thought of a way, which is to use the devouring characteristics of Russell's own small universe. Directly devour the space gate reinforced by the Kree Empire. If it is not devoured, it can also destabilize this space gate. Then they would have no way to send people out. It has to be said that this is a bold idea, and Russell himself was shocked when the idea just popped into his mind. But it is indeed possible to give it a try, and Russell does not know how it will turn out. Just now, the space gate is surrounded by warships, densely packed with Dark Elves and Frost Titans. And at the moment Carrie is slowly returning to this plane. The Carrie Empire reached such an agreement with the Dark Elves and the Frost Titan before. First, the Dark Elves and Frost Titans sent troops to contain Asgard and Russell. Then the Kree Empire sent itself over to reinforce the space gate. Then put the other compatriots of Dark Elf and Frost Titan out. For this result, the leaders of the Dark Elves and Frost Titans have no objection for. Because they will definitely be out by then. With their strength, even the Jingli Empire dare not have any ideas. But they didn't know what the Carrie Empire was planning. In fact, the Gate of Space has always been stable, but the Kree Empire deliberately created an illusion of instability. The Carrie Empire did this to limit the strength of these Dark Elves and Frost Titans. Otherwise, if they crush Russell and the others, then I'm afraid that I won't have any good fruit to eat. With the nature of these Dark Elves and Frost Titans, the sand of the Kree Empire would definitely not be tolerated. The Carrie Empire still has this self-knowledge. Although Thanos also took some people to the battlefield, they were basically technicians operating battleships. There is basically no need to go to the battlefield. The people who go to the battlefield are all Dark Elves and Frost Titans. Carrie Star. At the moment Thanos has established a stronghold outside Carrie Star, waiting for Carrie Star to teleport back. Now the purpose of the Kree Empire is about to be achieved. In the face of these powerful enemies from other planes, Asgard and the Earth are obviously powerless. Fortunately, they didn't release the Frost Titan that Asgard had beaten back to their hometown. And the Dark Elf who was crushed by Russell's Iron Mage before. They are now just waiting for the final team to assemble. At that time, it is really powerless. Russell and Odin, after Carol's brief discussion, decided to form a commando team. It's up to them to lead this commando team. Go directly behind the enemy lines and destroy the space gate. The frontal battlefield is handed over to Asgard and Russell's Steel Mages. At this level of battle, the troops on the Earth can basically not help much. Now, Asgard is full of warriors. Russell, Odin, and Carol led a group of elites and set off for Carrie. Russell has practiced this method many times, and there is a certain possibility of success. However, whether it can successfully break through the enemy's defense is unknown. Before that, Russell took a look at his own small universe. The small universe is already quite large compared to before, and the planets absorbed before are now growing vigorously. And the small space of Tree and his people also increased after Russell absorbed the power of Murphy Toth. The overall condition is still very good. If you want to swallow this space loophole, even if it doesn't swallow it, at least it can make it lose its stability. This purpose can be regarded as achieved. It's just that Russell has never considered Murphy Toth and Dormammu. These two big guys have always been eyeing the Earth. I don't know if they will take action this time. After what happened last time, it is estimated that Dormammu and Murphy Toth will be very cautious. But this time the situation is indeed very special, almost a catastrophe that is rare in 1,000 years. If it is not handled well, the entire universe will be devastated. Really. Dormammu and Murphy Toth were also eager to move when they heard the news. But they couldn't handle Russell's strength, because Russell didn't make a shot just now. Before that, Russell abruptly absorbed a lot of their energy, as well as the sun. It's really hard to say who wins and who loses. Whether or not to show up now is a difficult choice. After working for a long time, the army on Russell's side has already approached the outer edge of Carey's star, and they are about to engage in battle. Dormammu and Mephitos made up their minds to stay in their old den with peace of mind. After so many lessons, Dormammu and Murphy Tosio learned their lesson. Sitting on the mountain and watching the tigers fight, it is not too late to go out in the end. Carey Planet Periphery. Looking at the Asgardian army in front of him, Thanos was a little nervous. On the other hand, the Dark Elf King and the Frost Titan King are on the other side. Looking at these Asgardian warriors, he didn't pay attention at all. And the Lord of the Dark Elves has been looking for Russell. He'd sensed a familiar force in Russell since the last time he tried the offense. Probably it was TIE particles. At that time, the Dark Elves lost these TIE particles, and some Black Elves happened to come across them. Only then did the Black Elf rise, and the TIE particles became the Black Elf's holy object. Only now, the Dark Elf Lord can't wait to retake the TIE particles. And at the moment, Isu's squad was with Carol in the rear of the entire army. Wait for the big fight to start. Odin stood in the army and was responsible for leading the army to attack, while Russell and Carol led a small team to directly attack the space gate. It was only when they reached the outskirts of Carey that they discovered that Carey had reappeared. The gate of space is being strengthened now. Just now when Carey teleported back, there was indeed some instability in the middle. But this is all within the expectations of the Kree Empire, and now it depends on how the fighting power of Russell and Ao is. Thanos stood on the battleship and watched the dense army below have begun to charge. I was a little excited, thinking that I might be able to get infinite gems after a while. Thanos' heart seems to be beating a lot faster. But he didn't see Russell in the army, as if Russell didn't come. This made Thanos a little puzzled. It was impossible for Russell not to appear in this level of battle. Looking at the army that was already close at hand, Thanos was not in the hesitation, and rushed down to join the battle. The Dark Elf King was still looking at the army in the distance, thoughtful. But the leader of the Frost Titan didn't think so much, looking at the Asgardian army rushing towards him. Frost Titan's eyes were red, and he rushed down to the army. And Russell and his party hidden behind the army have spied Thanos and Orgysis, the king of Frost Titan, who have come to the front of the army and started fighting. Now there is only the Dark Elf King on the battleship. Looks like now is the best time. Following Russell's order, Russell and Carol led a team and charged towards the space gate from the flank. And at the moment the Dark Elf King is still observing the situation of the battle. He has always liked looking at the battlefield like this, watching the soldiers fight bloody battles. It's just that the battle is almost one-sided now. Facing the Dark Elves and the Frost Titans, Odin's forces were clearly powerless. And Odin is also haunted by Thanos and Orgysis. Fortunately, Thor attracted Thanos, and Thanos is not very strong now. Basically, it is 50-50 with Thor, and Odin and Orgysis can basically draw a tie. The scene suddenly stalemate, and Russell's side has already begun to attack the defense of the Dark Elves on the flank. Carol rushed directly to the Dark Elf's troops alone, directly breaking a big gap in the Dark Elf's defense. Russell's team seized the opportunity and rushed in. It's just that the Frost Titans quickly blocked this gap. Now it's just Russell's squad. The Lord of the Dark Elves at the moment has found them. They came straight to them, and Carol was still at the forefront, and Russell was also helping Carol to share some of the enemies. Although the Dark Elves are very strong, their attacks are often scattered by the joint attack of Carol and Russell before they reach the squad. However, at the moment, the King of Dark Elves has also reached the only way for Russell's troops. A man stuck in the middle of the road, waiting for Russell's squad to rush here. The Lord of the Dark Elves at the moment is ready for battle, watch them out. The smile on the face of the Dark Elf King was no longer concealed. Watching Russell fighting, he seemed to see TIE particles beckoning to him. It's such a disappointment. I always thought you guys were able to play to all your strengths. Is this the only result? It really disappoints me. Forget it. Let me end you. A black ball of light appeared in the hands of the Dark Elf King. The orb then slammed into Russell's team. Carol was the first to bear the brunt, resisting the ball of light at once, but it was a bit of experience. Russell also felt the strength just now, almost able to compete with Carol. Carol glanced at Russell, and Russell immediately understood what Carol meant. Nod to Carol. Carol didn't say much, and rushed directly to the Dark Elf King, preparing for close combat. It's just that the king of the Dark Elves saw Carol's thoughts early on, and immediately stepped back. During this gap, Russell has charged in, and there seems to be some special equipment placed on Russell. As soon as Russell stepped into the space near the space gate, he felt a strong suppression, and sent his own to the suppression. But it seems that the transmission is only suppressed. Other magics were not affected, but Thanos rushed back when Russell was just about to start planning. It's finally the moment you've been waiting for, Supreme Mage Russell. Thanos looked at Russell with piercing eyes, and he clenched the double-edged sword in his hand. And Russell also squeezed out the rune, ready to fight Thanos. On the Frost Titan, Ogysus alone resisted the attacks of Odin and Thor. Although a little powerless, it seems that he can still resist for a while. Carol and the Dark Elf King are also fighting in full swing. There was no one to help Russell now. Likewise, there are almost no one around Thanos. Now, it was the previous battle between the two, although Thanos' reputation and Russell's reputation were still quite loud. But the two have never officially played against each other like today. Russell has already expected the confrontation in this situation. He has many ways to trap Thanos now, but the time is not long enough to devour the door of space. And after the engulfment of this small universe begins, Russell himself will be greatly restricted. That is, the power that devours the space gate will pass through Russell during the devouring process. This greatly limits Russell's power. In normal times, Russell would have cleaned up Thanos in no time. However, Russell came up with a way to use the time gem's imprisonment to imprison Thanos for a period of time. Then construct a protective shield by yourself, and start to devour yourself. Although the risk of doing so is great, there seems to be no better way now. Seeing that Russell also squeezed out the rune, Thanos also rushed towards Russell without hesitation. Russell didn't bother, and was about to use the time gem directly. For an instant, Thanos was stuck in place. He watched Russell pass by him helplessly. Russell then unfolded the rune again, constructing a huge amounts of defensive rune behind himself. After doing all this, Russell looked back at the gate of space. At the moment Carrie is still sending troops to Russell, but the defensive circle made by Russell is blocked outside. All he could do was watch Russell walk towards the door of space. As soon as Russell beckoned, the energy of the small universe began to gradually form a devouring flow. At the same time, the gate of space also began to collapse, but now it is only some minor collapses. Thanos saw Russell attacking the space gate directly. Struggling hard, but the power of this time gem can't be said to be just struggling. Seeing Russell's appearance, the Dark Elf King also panicked. But Carol followed the Dark Elf King very closely. The Dark Elf King had no time to leave before he was stopped by Carol again. Ogysus also felt the abnormality of the gate of space. This Thanos, what a bastard. It's just that although Ogysus is cursing, his own situation is not easy. This Odin and Thor cooperate very well.